Throughout the entire European countries, you will not find an earthen mound as large and as old as Silbury Hill. It literally dominates the immediate landscape. Once again, we find ourselves back in the heartland of where it all began some 16 years ago now. And just a mile away is the brand new formation at the Ridgeway Path, which runs very close to Silbury Hill. This is the start of the circle chasing in 2004.
Our first port of call for the 2004 season was along the ancient Ridgeway Path, an 85-mile-long chalk ridge used by prehistoric man and Britain's oldest road. It was a chance to get away from life's hustle and bustle and view this magnificent design, the first of the large formations. It was located at the very start of the Ridgeway on Overton Hill, close to the ancient burial mounds which can be seen from miles around. We certainly couldn't have asked for a more profound symbolic event.
Barley is the most photographic crop in the entire season, purely from the fact that it creates this wonderful flowing effect, that wave effect across the crop.
It is always vitally important for us to make time in our busy schedule to have a chance to see what's happening at ground level, as in recent times, floor patterns have become more complex and require further investigation. Today, the significance of the spoil is deep-rooted within our culture and has to come to symbolise magic, dreams, and a desire to progress spiritually. This particular formation highlighted how expressive barley can be as a medium. The floor pattern flowed just like water down rapids, resulting in such a provocative effect from the air. The time here allowed us to explore the more intricate parts of the design, especially the centres.
And this is a fantastic example of a scroll you will see in Barley today. You can see this wonderful flowing effect, which is in an anti-clockwise rotation. And this is a superb nest centre with this stems flowing or tightly woven around the actual centre, and a few little stems standing in the middle there, which are completely unaffected, as you can see. A fantastic example in late May.
A fascinating story arose out of the appearance of this formation within daylight hours, an event similar to the which occurred back in 1996 at Stonehenge. A local pilot flew some tourists over the area on the morning of the 29th of May to view the ghost outline of formation from the previous year. He flew very close to the Overton Hill field. At the time, according to his report, no formation could be seen. On returning to the same location with further passengers, the formation was clearly visible in the field. The period of time between the two flights was under an hour. The pilot remains adamant that there was no formation in the field on his first flight. As a representative of the internal and ever-present forces of nature, or simply as an attractive and interesting pattern, spirals will always be reflected in our art for all time.
This obelisk, set high on the South Downs, overlooks probably the most famous UK harbours. It was built 2 years after the Battle of Trafalgar in 1807 in honour of Lord Nelson himself. It is literally 120 feet high and can be seen for literally miles around. But on this occasion, in the middle of Hampshire, we found the urge to come and see this exquisite formation. A departure for us, but we're really glad we did.
Never before have we seen such a close representation of the 4,500-year-old ancient engravings seen in the burial sites of Newgrange in Ireland and in the temple of Altarixion on the island of Malta. The significance of this pattern has great importance, as the principle in the design indicates quite clearly that there is message of transference from the materialistic to one that is spiritual. Basically, the ancient symbolism was used in several occasions as a spiritual barrier into the inner sanctuary. This is the crossover from the transient world to be reborn. This theme was used throughout the megalithic and Neolithic worlds, in much of Europe, Mexico, China and even Egypt. It possibly suggests the balance of the opposing energies by which enlightenment can be eventually reached. Did the close proximity of Nelson's obelisk and the fort suggest a paradoxical message being conveyed at this location? Was it trying to suggest the opposing ideas of the conflicts of war to the eventual enlightenment of humanity? Within the formation, the floor pattern demonstrated superb control to create the spiraled effect. It was the first time we have seen a formation of this type at such close range. A similar design occurred in 2002 at West Overton, resembling an ancient engraving, but this is the first time we have seen two opposing spirals merge. On walking into one of the centres, the spiralling path was quite astonishing to view, and the stems themselves remained in excellent condition on inspection, with no signs of markings or the application of force. But this abstruse event in front of us, in an unlikely location, made us contemplate what was to come from the circuit makers. It was a slow start to the season, but we had already witnessed such quality from the fields, rather than quantity. We left this picturesque location with great expectation for the future. It certainly became a topic of conversation on the Crop Circuit Connector website and captured people's imagination as they discussed its potential meaning.
The barges in the canal are a wonderful backdrop for the next creation of the circuit makers. This one just across the canal is actually a lotus flower of exquisite beauty and great spiritual significance.
It had a simplistic beauty to its design, very close to the Avon Kennet Canal, which added a charm to this pattern. However, the design resembled a formation that appeared 4 years ago below Golden Ball Hill, just a mile from this location. That particular event was supposed to have been the result of a focus group meditation in India, which occurred several centuries before. Are we looking at some kind of thought process that had been sent through time and space to appear in the fields of Wiltshire? We mentioned the spiritual significance inherent in the geometry, and this is very close to a lotus flower, which was used to signify enlightenment in many ancient cultures. In Hindu philosophy, the lotus is the flower of light, basically a symbol of matter and spirit. The unfolding wings of this formation are said to represent expanding wisdom and spiritual revelation. So whatever the ultimate message was at Honey Street, it left us feeling extremely uplifted by its presence.
The eve of the summer solstice brings fantastic anticipation. Anything can happen on this actual weekend. And we have a new formation down in Eastfield. People are already enjoying the formation and we are just about to join them.
An event such as this, in probably the most famous field for crop circles in the world, is of course highly celebrated. A formation that occurs over the solstice weekend just enhances its popularity, and indeed the people we met within the formation certainly added to the spirit of the whole occasion. It was extremely well received, and many parts of the design display features we have been used to seeing over the many years. Many different parts of the central lay patterns could be seen, and even the floor construction within the main channel had a wonderful flowing quality to it. The design itself had many parts to it, which resembled formations of the past, with a connecting avenue and diminishing circles we have seen countless times with the thought bubble patterns. This resulted in a pleasing and well-proportioned event, and certainly a dramatic view from the hilltops. Like the majority of these field formations, the people became part of the experience. We found ourselves having stimulating conversations on the formation's possible origins and discussing the details found on the ground. On researching the type of design that appeared here, not only were there obvious lyrical qualities to the pattern, but also it had an uncanny resemblance to a Far Eastern symbol which was used to signify eternally long life for countless generations. So this rather unusual formation had turned up some fascinating hints about its design and what it could ultimately signify. Once again, a Far Eastern connection was noticeable, but its appearance on the midsummer weekend meant that people flocked to see it, and we were delighted they could witness something quite majestic in its natural theatre. We were delighted to witness a formation of this magnitude in these fields on such an important weekend astrologically. We felt that last year's formation was a little too late in the season. Even at this stage, when the crop is still very green, formations can produce a fascinating details on the floor, and from the air we can see how well defined it is in this well-known location.
We remembered the swallows from 2003, a fantastic formation from every conceivable angle you can think of. And in 2004, we can see we have a similar event with this wing structure just over from Walker's Hill where the swallow was. So we can see there's a pattern emerging in 2004.
One of the intriguing aspects about following crop circles is that they can at times represent creatures in a rather stylistic fashion that doesn't immediately strike you as a complete interpretation. The formation was very quickly known as the bee because of its obvious thorax design in the main body and its outstretched wings. The connection with the swallows from 2003 is certainly worth noting, as once again a wing structural design has appeared in the adjacent field over from where the swallows resided. So why are we being shown creatures at this particular site underneath the Alton Barnes White Horse? Can we possibly explain the connection with regard to creatures of flight? The bee just may contain meanings which are worthy of consideration. Certainly from a geometrical perspective, we do seem to have a clear connection with regard to the swallow's event. It too had a simple principle or development within the design of a shape that would become a major player in the designs of 2004. The profound but simple vesica piscis is quite simply the basic pattern of the bee, contained in the head and thorax sections, and is the figure of sacred geometry in architecture. It is also found within the structure of nature itself, such as living insects to the makeup of flowers. The vesica seems to interlock with each other to create a structure of the design, creating a chain from the head to its tail. This was also apparent within the swallows, as the same principles were applied. What is also just as fascinating is that the bee had a connection with the Hermetic symbol, the Caduceus, or the Staff of Mercury, with its two serpentine paths created in its design are in Hermeticism the subtle energies sulfur and quicksilver. These energies are the two serpents which are fixed around the staff in which Mercury wields his great power.
On hillsides such as this, on a wonderful evening, we can fully appreciate the majesty these formations bring to the whole of the Wiltshire countryside.
West Kent Longbarrow is an impressive Neolithic tomb situated on the prominent chalk ridge near Silbury Hill, and is one of the largest chamber long barrows you will see today in Britain. Formations have appeared very close to its site, but we can see in this event this was the closest. The Saracen uprights looked out onto the new arrival in Wiltshire.
This is a truly exciting evening. On a Tuesday evening, I've just seen the new digital shots of the brand new formation at West Kent Longbarrow, and it's a sensational location. And as you can see, it's very close to Silbury Hill, so let's go and see it.
On this beautiful summer's evening, Silbury and West Kennet created a magnificent venue for this unusual design, which had an obvious connection to the sun and the moon.
Well, we talked about this being a sensational location, and truly it is. It's right next to the West Kent Longbarrow, which is a 5,500-year-old burial chamber and one of the most celebrated in the whole of the world. And this really is a prime spot for a crop circle location, and there never has been one so close to the barrow itself. But these sun rays have really brought out the evening sun here in this fantastic location, one of the best I've seen in Wiltshire this year.
The actual light on this evening enhanced the ground features, which we can see clearly from the images displayed, with its outer ring framing the rays from within the design. There were 18 rays in total, diminishing in size as it faced the barrow itself. The people that visited the formation were generally very excited about its design and presence so close to the ancient sites, and wondered about its possible meaning. Many conversations sprang up about its proximity to the burial chamber and the finer details found within the floor construction. As we rotate around the centre of the formation, we can clearly see details of another centre and how the crop is flat to the ground. This is a common characteristic at this time of year. The crescent on the Barrow side of the formation was extremely well formed and created an eclipse aspect to the whole pattern. We all wondered if this was its intention, to highlight perhaps the dawning beckoning for all of us. Whatever it was trying to convey, it touched many people, and I feel part of the emotion had something to do with its exact positioning next to the ancient site. This field had seen previous formations, but none had been located so close to the barrel before, creating a whole new experience for the people who had a chance to see it.
These ancient stones were placed here many thousands of years ago and are a wonderful backdrop to the new formation here at West Kent Longbarrow. And it's a prime example of how close a formation can be to these wonderful ancient structures.
The relationship between the sun and the moon would have been the key to understanding the reasoning behind the construction of many of the great stone circles that were constructed throughout the British Isles.
There are an amazing 9 white horses in 30 square miles of where I'm standing now at Avebury Castle, the home of the Cherry Hill White Horse. Cut in 1780, most of the horses were cut in the last 250 years. But the one we're most interested in is the Uffington White Horse. This mysterious chalk carving is literally thousands of years old and started this whole process off. Uffington White Horse, the oldest of all the chalk figures in England, thought to have been constructed well over 1000 BC, it has baffled historians for centuries on why it was constructed and by whom. The animal lies at some 30 degrees on a northwesterly direction. Clearly we can see at close quarters at the bottom of the hillside that the figure should have been placed some 30 yards down. So initially it wasn't the best vantage point to be seen from this position, but if it had been placed down, we would all been able to see it.
The enigmatic horse was carved on the highest point of the Ridgeway path, at some 856 feet above sea level. The Ridgeway runs directly past the horse on what is called White Horse Hill, which also indicates the ancient fortification crowning the summit of this chalk hill. Directly below is Dragon's Hill.
This location is where the two mysteries actually merge. Uffington White Horse has seen several formations over the last 10 years of various sizes and complexities, and these fields behind me is where the real action takes place.
From the top of Dragon's Hill, one can clearly view across the landscape.
Dragon's Hill is a small flat-top hill detached from the downs and situated just below the White Horse. Legend has it that St George both slew and buried the dragon here, actually on its summit where I'm standing. And the white patch is basically where he spilled the dragon's blood. And despite several attempts to sow it over the ages, nothing will ever grow. But also, the hill itself looks like it could have been part of some ceremony taking place many thousands of years ago, perhaps from the same people who cut the horse.
The White Horse and Dragon's Hill are mythical sites with power to draw thousands of visitors each year. Their original function has been lost in prehistory, but perhaps the dry valley directly in front of the horse could hold clues to its reason for being here. Is there a mysterious element to the horse's location so far up? Why was it placed in its exact position? What secrets does it hide? The model glider in these images may provide a tantalizing link to its legendary past.
This leaves a very intriguing question to be asked. Was the figure ultimately intended to be seen from the skies, perhaps in honour of their gods? Or are we bold enough to conceive that the power of flight was possible somehow at this time, leaving this unique event in prehistory?
This was an impressive spectacle on the eastern side of Wimble Hill. Never before have we seen a hillside witness a formation of this scale, with several circles of various sizes down one axis, which culminate in a series of crescents that created the head section of the design. On first glance, it once again resembled some kind of animal or insect.
This is the largest formation to date in the United Kingdom. You will not believe the size of this on the lower plains of Wimmer Hill. It is massive. Behind me, it goes on for at least another 600 feet. And to the right and left of me is at least 50 foot from where I'm standing. It really is an enormous, and it has similarities to the B formation which formed earlier this year. Once again, Wimmer Hill becomes the spotlight for the season.
But on further analysis of the design, the entire formation appeared to have a resemblance to the Phoenician goddess called Tanit, with her outstretched arms, very much like the crescents which are part of the head section. Here we can see close-ups of the smaller circles around the head.
The sheer scale of this formation can only fully be appreciated as I walk down the main axis, and a series of circles in ever decreasing sizes can be seen as we walk down. This here, as I'm walking into, is the main circle of the whole tail, and is at least 90 feet across. There are many standing centres in this formation. This one here is a lovely classic example. This is on the main circle, the largest circle of the tail section. But also another very interesting feature about this circle is the fact that it has two centres. The second centre is this one here to my right as you see it, and is a classic example of what we've seen in 2003, well, we have the return in 2004.
There are plenty of finer details to be uncovered in many of the various size circles, and I took great pleasure in taking time out to view them at close quarters. This was one fine example of the many standing sections of crop in the circles which comprise the tail. This really was an impressive event, and a location well known for past crop circle activity.
We are now standing on the range of hills which include the Pewsey White Horse, and we have three events in the same field. Behind me, a very small ring single circle which appeared early in the season. Next to it, we have a design which has similarities to what we call the sacred tree or the axis mundi. And directly behind me, the massive formation, which only appeared a few days ago, which seems to have a symbology which represents the 7 chakras of the human body.
There aren't many opportunities where you can witness 3 events in one field from one vantage point, but the Pewsey hillside provided us with a fantastic view of these latest creations. This very long formation proved extremely popular, attracting meditation practices from all walks of life. But what are different elements to the formation?
I've just come down from the hillside, from the carved horse of Pewsey, and we're now standing in the new formation, and we're going to go around and show you different sections of it, just to show you exactly how massive this formation really is.
As we look directly down the axis, the foreground shows the crown chakra point. This chakra is the connection to our higher selves and the divine.
I'm now looking at the pupil in the actual eye section of the whole of the formation. Now this could possibly represent the third eye of the 7 chakra system of the body. This really is quite extraordinary. Yeah, this really is quite amazing to actually see the energy centres of the human body represented in a formation of this magnitude, several hundred feet long. And it's just like a journey of discovery, like a spiritual quest as we walk through this whole formation on its axis.
The chakra points are the energy vortices in our bodies that bring in the universal energies we require to sustain life. There are 7 major chakras, and they function as pathways for energy to be taken in, metabolized, and sent to corresponding major nerve centers.
You know, we always like to get to the heart of the matter when we visit formations. Hang on a second, this is a heart. But seriously, we have seen the heart shape before. There was one in 2000 which has something to do with some sort of wedding, but this one is far more important and has something to do, I think, with the heart chakra system.
We completed our journey down through the energy centers and reflected on how obvious the interpretation was to the energy centers of the human body. Located in the same field was what was quickly known to become as the axis mundi, which turned out to be a little gem and my favourite of the 3 events here at Pewsey. The floor construction had a fluidity to it, which was in contrast to the larger Shaka formation just across the field. We felt that the people were enjoying it far more because of its intimate size. But why was this particular formation so different?
Yes, this is a classic example of how contrasting designs can be in one field. I'm now walking in what we call the Axis Mundi, which is basically the sacred tree. In Celtic law, it honours three principles: the earth, the sky, and the space between, which is the spiritual realm.
Continuing the further meaning of the Axis Mundi, it is also regarded as the axis of the cosmos or universe, and is a fusion of the spiral or torus, which is the continuum of creation and completion.
We're now walking down one of the four arms of the Axis Mundi, and you can see here the wonderful floor patterning as it flows around, just like water in rapids. And it comes around into this huge, great sweep here to my right up to a centre point here with this cut-off section like a semicircle. And then I'm going to draw your attention to the circle here to my right, which is basically totally independent to the arm itself.
Our work was done with these two contrasting designs, and we all agreed they were extremely powerful in their interpretations.
Well, it's simply stunning, isn't it? This is the multiple flower pattern, the 7, 11 and 13 ratio. Fantastic.
This well-proportioned formation didn't break any design records, but its simplistic beauty was a delight to film, and a location which has seen many designs over the last 14 years. It was the details found on the ground, though, that most interested us.
This particular centre seems to be quite different from the others as we arrive here. We have obviously a standing section, and we can see that the plants themselves have been raised up off the ground and twisted round this whole standing clump of crop. It really is quite amazing to see.
There are many other details, like the one you have just seen, positioned within the central section of the design. The whole event was well constructed. We felt drawn to the further details that we noticed on the ground. In total, there were 8 nest centres positioned within the centre of the pattern.
Once again, we witness these raised nest centres, and you can see here there's an example that it's completely twisted round this particular clump of crop which I'm holding, and you can see that my hand here is holding the other crop which is twisted round the other, and this is an example of what we see on all 7 of these outer nest centres, and there's a middle nest centre as well.
We had a final opportunity to enjoy the wonderful details within the centre and to appreciate the surrounding Wiltshire countryside and its white horses as stunning backdrops. Around 4,000 to 5,000 miles are taken up travelling between formations between the months of April and August, scanning the countryside for the latest creations, driving down narrow lanes which crisscross the counties of Wiltshire and Hampshire. We tend to carry a large amount of equipment which is needed to create not only an accurate photographic record for the Crops to Connect website, but also now as independent video makers, we require digital cameras and audio equipment to produce our DVDs of each season. This equipment has to be extremely portable, light enough to carry and work within the fields throughout the summer months. Positioned in the left of the pathway that leads to the ancient chamber barrow of West Kennet, this bewildering offering from the circle makers took us all by surprise. It was a complete contrast to the earlier event positioned directly next to the chamber barrow. On first glance, the design seemed to be comprised of 4 quadrants of equal proportions.
I'm now walking in the huge formation next to the West Kennet long barrow. This is the second formation to appear here, near the ancient burial ground. And we have a 4 quadrant formation encompassed within an 8-pointed star, and it really is a sight to behold.
But because of the sheer size of the pattern, it was terribly confusing to work out initially. Our time within the formation allowed us to walk the pathways of each quadrant, and it was only then that many of its facets started to become apparent.
This is quite amazing. I'm walking down one of the tracks which makes up the 4 quadrants, and it is actually a maze, and I'm absolutely lost.
Perhaps the heat of the day was finally getting to me. As I'm walking the pathways, I found it wasn't a maze at all, but a labyrinth. You could only experience each of the 4 labyrinths independently of each other. Once my embarrassment had subsided, we carried on exploring.
Crop circles down through the years have been attracted to the tram lines themselves, almost like the circle makers need to use them for setting out purposes, and this really is a prime example. There are many interesting features in this formation, but this one stands out more than the rest. This is where we have 2 sections of crop parting in the central section of the formation, making up the 4 quadrants.
There were further surprises in store for us as we took aerial shots at different angles of the formation. We can clearly see the 3-dimensional aspect of the design as we flew on to other patterns at this incredibly busy time of the season.
This is simply stunning. This formation with its folded diminishing circles, its folded wings, certainly has some sort of connection with the bee, which is the next field to my right, and this formed over 3 nights, which is quite exceptional for the phenomenon, an important event.
A very important event. One of the many characteristics of a few of the new Millennium formations has been the creation of them over more than one night. Because of this, the Town Hill design caused great excitement amongst the general public, but it wasn't the first time we had such stories from the fields. However, we have never seen this on such a scale, as with such cunning and stealth.
We're now going to walk through this formation and show you how large this formation really is. It covers a vast area around me, but I think this formation has key features which seem to have linked towards the bee, which is to the left of me in the field below the White Horse. It really is an exceptional formation which happened over 3 nights.
Further study of the duration of this event had resulted in more surprises. It may have formed over 4 nights in total.
I'm walking down one of the arms which happened on the 3rd night, and you can see here we have some fantastic examples in each of the circles of this arm, and this one here is a prime example.
This was part of the first night of activity, the unfinished body part, which was created on July the 28th. There are many finer examples of circle nest centres in many of the tail and wing sections. The lower half of the body wasn't fully completed until the 4th day of work on the design.
Well, we talked about this formation appearing over 3 nights. This is just one part of the 2nd night of activity, and this circle contains no more than 5 centres, with this middle centre here, with this twisted effect round, standing crop, but each centre has its own differences.
As we now know, the formation appeared between the 28th and the 31st of July, which is extremely unprecedented for an event of this nature. The tail section formed on the morning of the 30th of July.
These circles you see behind me happened on the 2nd night of its creation, which go off into the main body of the design. But these circles I'm walking in now have standing centres and also an outer ring. Now this happened on the 3rd night, the 3rd event, which is quite exceptional for a formation in Wiltshire. And this is a prime example of what we see in one of the smaller circles.
There were 11 circles in total making the tail, with this very top circle cutting into the main body. But But as we left the formation, we couldn't help thinking that the phenomenon was moving into an entirely new arena. Will we eventually be looking at formations that could have taken a whole week to form? The words "simply breathtaking" were uttered by nearly everyone we came into contact with when mentioning this event.
This amazing formation opposite Silbury Hill is a line of designs which are formed over 2 nights. This wing structure I'm walking in now was formed partly on the second night, but the whole design is simply outstanding.
On first glimpse of this pattern, it immediately reminded us of some kind of Egyptian design, especially the central folding wings, as these are the most striking part of the whole design. They are identical, with 18 splayed paths creating what appear to be feathers, with 6 claw-like segments which fold inward. From the aerial images, we can clearly see how powerful the end result was. Does this formation bear witness to artwork from an ancient culture?
These narrow paths I'm walking down now make up the wing structure. Now these wings interlock each other in the inner part of the formation, and they give a sense of some sort of Egyptian feel. Awe-inspiring.
Never before have we witnessed such a profound design so close to Silbury in relation to ancient beliefs and wisdom.
These blocks I'm walking into now were just standing on the first night, but on the second night they were filled in to make these Grecian keys. And there are several of them all around the formation, and they make up a really intricate pattern.
Further study has shown that these motifs around the perimeter were not Grecian in origin, but were Mayan. They had an uncanny resemblance to a part of the calendar system, or universally known as the Mayan calendar. Many of the cultures in Mesoamerica believed that time proceeded not linearly, but in cycles, just as the world was created, destroyed, and recreated time and again. New evidence has arisen to support the idea of a periodical shift in the poles of the Earth. What is very interesting is that this could have occurred every 5,000 years. Within the Mayan calendar, time was counted as of year 3114 BC, with its end cycle year of 2012 AD. It was a stunning formation with its intricate design showing us a time frame set by a culture that had profound wisdom of the movements of time for the future of the Earth and its possible fate. I guess only time would tell.
I'm really taken back by the sheer scale and majesty this formation brings to this whole area, and this is the third major design to appear next to the ancient Silbury Hill, just clipping the tops behind us.
It will certainly always remain in the memories of everyone who had the chance to view this marvellous creation. Probably the most powerful and enigmatic formation to appear in Wiltshire over the last 14 years. Could it actually contain information about a troublesome time for the Earth within our lifetime? A formation appeared in the field around this beautiful sleepy Berkshire village called Sherborne.
Set in this wonderful valley of Sherborne is a formation that creates the overlapping of 2 equal circles, which produces the birth of the Vesica Pisces, the conjunction of spirit and matter, and basically the emblem of above and below.
The shape of the Vesica Pisces, literally vessel or the fish, is derived from the intersection of the 2 circles, which we can see here. What magnifies the effect of the intersection is the fact that these 2 concentric rings create an illusion of the Vesica many times over. There were more surprises in store for us on the ground.
Once again, we see this very interesting feature which was seen in 2003 in Scrobes Wood. Here in 2004 we have the fan effect moving to the left and to the right of the formation, and it goes around in certain sections of the crop.
The merging of the 2 concentric rings created this amazing visual effect from the air, and it could be equally appreciated from the ground as well. It was one of the most unusual patterns to form in 2004. Its basic format created this sublime shape. The Vesica cliff that emerges from the formation is certainly mysterious. In pagan times, it was associated with the goddess Venus and is now used extensively in Christianity. It's not entirely clear why, but early depictions of Christ depict him as an infant in the Vesica. usually called the mandorla, meaning almond-shaped.
I'm now walking in what is the very clever part of this formation. This is basically where the circles and the ring merge together to create this multiplying effect of the vesicopices, and from the air it creates this wonderful sense of movement. I'm now actually on my way to see this beautiful formation next to Wilton Windmill, which is a very, very famous landmark in Wiltshire. And it looks like the formation from first glance could possibly mimic the actual structure itself. Very interesting. Follow me.
From the air, we can clearly see the correlation to the windmill, which dominates the surrounding landscape. This structure, with its 6 segments, created an impression of the sails. The whole design came as a big surprise to all of us. However, it was its central circle's floor construction which surpassed everyone's expectations.
I can't wait to see the centre on this formation. And my goodness, we have a real gem here. This raised spiral effect is the first I've seen of its kind.
On further ground study, it appeared to be a knotted rope of crop that spiraled out from the very centre. A detail none of us had come across before and wasn't repeated in any other parts of the formation. This particular day finally gave us a chance to enjoy the company of many of the researchers from this country and abroad. On this very day, we had many of the leading researchers from Holland, Germany, Switzerland, America and the UK. It was a thoroughly enjoyable location and wonderful to see everyone working in their area of expertise. However, the real highlight for everyone was this marvellous central detail, which was covered quite extensively by everyone at the location using photography and ground surveys. It was a very unlikely place for us to visit. Never before have the phenomenon appeared within these fields, and yet one had to wonder why. It was a beautiful spot, and the message within the design was a complete mystery. Perhaps the sails of the windmill point us towards a more natural way we need to view our energy resources. The power of the crop circles comes within their symbology, and how its design affects us all on a subconscious level. At the end of the day, we can only speculate on its true meaning. One thing was for sure, it caused a lot of interest from everyone, with plenty to view at ground level, with many questions being raised from the researchers on how certain parts of the formation were constructed. We couldn't keep our eyes off this beautiful creation in the centre, and many of us spent our time within it, contemplating on its detailed construction. In fact, the whole formation was being analysed very thoroughly by the researchers on the day, and this is an excellent example of how much hard work and dedication goes into ground research. On discovering certain aspects of the formation's design, it became a little clearer on what we could be possibly looking at. The central spiral feature had an uncanny resemblance to once again the Mayan calendar, or what was called the Mayan dreaming spell 13 moon calendar. Was this a message being unveiled in the last formations of the season, once again connecting the year 2012?
We end this year at an area where it all began in 2004. This crop circle season will be remembered for several reasons. We received formations which actually formed over several nights, but if that wasn't extraordinary enough, at least 2 formations were alleged to have formed in actual daylight. This leads us on to the Ridgeway Formation, which kick-started the whole season in Wiltshire. The splendid Ridgeway Formation on the 29th of May was one of the designs that was alleged to have formed in daylight, causing great excitement amongst the community. The Porchester event on the 11th of June, the ancient engraving design was a welcome sight so early on in the season and created a fascinating debate on its possible symbolism. The formation on the 26th of June, below the slopes of Milk Hill, had a multitude of different meanings. The most popular resembled a bee. We moved forward into July and the stunning location at West Kennet Longbow. This celebrated formation was enhanced greatly by its close proximity to the ancient site and very quickly became the place to visit for everyone who was over to see the crop circles of this year. Possibly the longest formation in Wiltshire in 2004, This huge event on the lower slopes of Wimmer Hill was an impressive sight on this ancient hillside, and it had an uncanny resemblance to Tanit, the ancient Phoenician goddess of the moon. This highly controversial design had to be reported in a way it was found on the morning of the 26th of July. The overall design was extremely well formed, which is why it had to be mentioned in our final list of formations for 2004. Certainly one of the most impressive designs to appear in 2004, the Tan Hill Formation is one of the events that formed over several nights.
On a glorious summer's night at the end of the season, I decided to return to where it had all begun for us and make one last flight to revisit some of the most wonderful formations that have appeared around the ancient sites. The final formation to have appeared in the area, so near to Silver Hill, literally took everyone's breath away. The formation was simply awesome to witness, not only from the ground, but also from the air, where the sheer majesty of the geometry can be fully appreciated. Its meaning appears to be connected to the 2012 scenario, in relation to the end of the Mayan calendar. I am sure its appearance at this time will be hotly debated throughout the coming months. So what more surprises will be in store for us in 2005? We can only once again speculate, but if it turns out to be anything like 2004, then we are in for another rollercoaster ride in Wiltshire next season.